Solve it and $700 million is yours, Japanese CEO laughed, but a black janitor stunned the board. The explosion of glass hit before the boardroom even realized what it meant. Arthur Diggory froze mid-trash bag tie, the industrial bin still warm against his palm as alarms shrieked down the marble corridor. Inside the executive chamber, the chamber he was never supposed to be near, voices erupted, sharp, terrified, overlapping like panic made audible. Arthur's breath hitched. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. And that's where this story begins. Hello, my beautiful viewers, before we go deeper into this insane night, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and how you're feeling today. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, you're gonna want to. Stories like this? You don't want to miss them. Now, back to Arthur, standing in a storm of sirens and secrets. He wasn't supposed to hear the words that followed, but life doesn't wait for permission before it throws the impossible at you. $700 million on the line, and none of you can crack it? The voice, smooth, accented, controlled, belonged to Saito Granger, the Japanese CEO whose gaze could freeze concrete. Arthur felt tension coil down his spine like a live wire. 700 million? Solve what? The board members babbled excuses. It's unsolvable. The algorithm contradicts itself. No human could do this without decades. A laugh cut through it. Cold. Certain. Saito Granger said, then I suppose the money stays with me. Arthur's heart pounded. Not because of the money. Because of the tone. The challenge. The implication that something impossible had just been thrown on the table, and everyone had folded before the game even began. Arthur shuffled backward, trying to slip away unnoticed, but the corridor lights flickered overhead, plunging half the hallway into dim shadow. His hand skimmed the wall for balance. Another crash inside the boardroom. Papers hitting the floor. A chair skidding back violently. Then the real tension detonated. Someone's watching. Arthur's soul nearly fell through the floor. Before he could step away, the boardroom doors flew open, and Saito Granger's silhouette sliced through the light, sharp suit, sharper gaze. His eyes locked onto Arthur Diggory. The janitor holding a trash bag. The black man they passed in hallways without ever seeing. The last person they expected to be standing there. And Sato's voice lowered into something dangerous, deliberate. You. Come in here. Now. Arthur swallowed hard, his pulse thundering loud enough to drown out the alarms. Something in Sato's expression, curiosity? Challenge? Threat, made the air feel electrically pressed against his skin. The boardroom brimmed with tension, not the corporate kind, the life-changing kind. Executives in tailored suits glared, confused, annoyed, offended. A woman near the center, Ariadne Weasley, Arthur recognized her, looked genuinely worried. For him? Or for what was happening here? No one spoke as Arthur stepped inside, the door shutting behind him with a final, heavy click. Trash bag still in his hand. Saito folded his arms, studying Arthur the way a scientist studies a rare specimen. What did you hear? Arthur's throat tightened. He could lie. Or run. Or pretend ignorance. But something in him, something he usually kept hidden, flared awake. So he answered honestly. Enough to know you're stuck. A ripple went through the room. Shock. Offense. Intrigue. Ariadne Weasley's eyes softened with something like recognition? Sympathy? Maybe even hope. Saito leaned forward, hands clasped behind his back. You believe you can solve what my board cannot? Arthur didn't even know what it was. But he felt pulled in by magnetism he couldn't name. The buzzing lights. The pressure thick enough to choke on. The sudden clarity that he was no longer an invisible man sweeping floors. He forced his voice to stay steady. Show me the problem. Gasps. Laughter, small, disbelieving. One executive muttered, "This is ridiculous." Saito didn't laugh this time. Not really. He exhaled through his nose, amused, but razor-sharp. You understand, Saito said slowly, that solving this formula would grant you $700 million? Arthur's chest tightened, not from greed, but from something deeper, stranger, more dangerous than money, the hunger to prove, maybe for the first time in his life, that he wasn't the man everyone thought he was. Ariadne stepped forward subtly, watching Arthur with intense curiosity. Let him try, she said softly, but firmly. What do we have to lose? The board murmured. The room's energy shifted. Saito finally uncrossed his arms. Very well. He turned to the digital wall, tapping a control panel. The screen blazed to life, flooding the room in cold blue light. Lines of equations cascaded across it, dense, tangled, monstrous. Arthur's breath hitched again, but this time for a different reason. He understood pieces of it. Not fully, but enough to feel that eerie spark of recognition, like a melody you've heard in a dream. He stepped closer. Every executive watched. Every doubt weighed the air. Every second stretched like a held breath. He didn't know how he'd gotten here. Why fate had pulled him into this room. Why a Japanese CEO was challenging a janitor to a $700 million impossible problem. But he knew one thing. This was not an accident. And as he reached toward the glowing screen, his fingers hovering over the first line of the impossible equation, he felt the fuse ignite. Everything in his life was about to change. If you're still watching, drop a ready for part 2 in the comments and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see where this goes next. Arthur Diggory should have felt out of place, standing among executives worth more per minute than he made in a month. But as the glowing equations reflected in his dark eyes, the boardroom faded. The fluorescent lights dimmed into background static. His heartbeat slowed into something sharp, focused. Ariadne Weasley watched him with her arms crossed, but her posture wasn't defensive, it was fascinated, almost protective. Her gaze flicked between Arthur and Saito Granger with a quiet warning, don't push him too far. Saito stood like a carved statue. Before you touch anything, he said, I want to know who you are. Arthur tensed. I clean your building, he replied. That's it. A soft scoff came from a board member. Exactly. But Ariadne cut her eyes toward the man with a glare that shut him up instantly. Arthur exhaled slowly. That answer wasn't the full truth, and something inside nudged him, soft but insistent. He cleared his throat. I used to study applied mathematics. Before my mom got sick. Before bills piled up. Before life happened. The words felt raw coming out, like layers he hadn't touched in years. But there it was, his truth, laid bare in a room that wasn't meant for him. A silence followed, not mocking this time, but contemplative. Ariadne stepped closer, her voice gentle. You walked away from school to take care of your family? Arthur shrugged, trying not to show how much the question hit. Someone had to. The room's energy shifted again, not sympathy, but respect. Even Sato's hard expression softened by a fraction. And the mathematics? You still practice? Arthur swallowed. He wanted to say no. That he had let it go. But that was another lie. He nodded slightly. Late nights. Books from thrift shops. Whatever I can find online. Then he added, almost embarrassed. I guess I never learned how to let it go. Ariadne's lips curved into a slow smile, one that made Arthur's stomach flip unexpectedly. That's not something you let go, she murmured. It's something built into your bones. The board members shifted, exchanging new glances. Curiosity replacing doubt. Saito circled Arthur like he was evaluating a weapon. Mathematics is not just numbers, he said. It is hunger. Instinct. Obsession. His eyes narrowed. Do you have that, Mr. Diggory? Arthur didn't look away. I wouldn't be standing here if I didn't. Something clicked behind Sato's gaze. Then the CEO tapped the digital screen again, isolating a portion of the massive algorithm. This formula, he said, is an encryption sequence designed to secure the global transfer project. If solved, it unlocks our next-generation AI, worth billions. He paused. But it requires an understanding of fractal dynamics that even experts cannot maintain without error. Arthur frowned. His mind moved through the symbols like stepping stones over a dark river. Parts of the sequence felt familiar, patterns he'd doodled on napkins during late-night shifts. Ariadne watched him carefully, noticing something the others hadn't: the way Arthur's eyes darted, the subtle tightening of his jaw, the intake of breath, signs of a brilliant mind kicking into gear. She stepped beside him, close enough that he could smell the faint citrus of her perfume. "You don't have to solve it now," she said softly. "Just tell us what you see." Arthur didn't realize he'd leaned slightly toward her warmth until he caught himself. "I see," he started, then stopped. The room leaned in. He forced the words out. "I see symmetry where there shouldn't be." Sato's brows lifted. Ariadne's lips parted in surprise. The board exploded with whispers. Arthur turned away from the noise, more focused now than ever. He touched the screen lightly, tracing a looping section with his finger. "This part," he said, "tries to hide itself by repeating the wrong pattern. It's intentional. Almost like..." He squinted. Someone wanted the solver to give up. A gasp. Ariadne's hand flew to her mouth. "You see that too?" Arthur nodded. Sato's eyes sharpened like a blade being honed. "You believe someone sabotaged the sequence?" Arthur hesitated, then spoke truthfully. "I don't know. But I see fingerprints. Someone hid them well, but they're there." A cold stillness spread through the room. A dangerous revelation had just been dropped, one even the board had never considered. Ariadne stepped closer. "Arthur, this could mean someone in the company engineered an unsolvable lock." "Why?" asked an executive. Saito didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on Arthur. "Money. Control. Power. Pick one." Arthur felt the weight of their stares: fear, hope, suspicion, awe. He suddenly wished he were back pushing a mop. Then Ariadne gently touched his elbow, grounding him. "Don't disappear," she whispered. "You belong here." He didn't know why that hit him so hard, but it did. His chest tightened. The board waited. And Arthur realized something important. This wasn't just a math problem. This was a trap. A conspiracy. And he'd just stepped into the center of it. Saito turned away from the screen with a curt nod. "Enough for tonight. We continue first thing in the morning." Executives gathered their papers, whispering anxiously as they exited. But Ariadne lingered beside Arthur. "You did something big in there," she said softly. "You shook the whole room." Arthur huffed a laugh. "Pretty sure I terrified them." "Good," she said with a spark of mischief. "They needed terrifying." Arthur laughed for real this time, the tension loosening. But Ariadne's expression shifted, more serious, more vulnerable. "You weren't supposed to hear those equations," she whispered. "But maybe you were exactly who needed to." Arthur felt something warm ignite in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a breath. "Be careful, Arthur. Whoever built that lock won't like that you saw through it." Arthur's pulse kicked. "You think I'm in danger?" Ariadne held his gaze, worry flickering in her eyes. "I think you're about to uncover something massive. And I don't want you facing it alone." He swallowed, the moment thick with unspoken meaning. Then she smiled, soft, slow, stunning. "See you tomorrow, Arthur Diggory." She walked away, leaving him standing in the empty boardroom, heart pounding, mind racing, and one truth echoing louder than all the rest. He was no longer invisible. Arthur Diggory didn't sleep. He tried. God knows he tried. But every time he closed his eyes, the algorithm pulsed behind his eyelids like a living creature, shifting, looping, repeating the wrong patterns on purpose. And every time he inhaled, he heard Ariadne Weasley's warning echo. Whoever built that lock won't like that you saw through it. By morning, he felt wired, exhausted, and strangely alive. He arrived an hour before his shift, hoping to slip upstairs unnoticed. But the moment he stepped into the hallway outside the boardroom, he froze. Security guards. 3 of them. Standing like statues. One scanned Arthur up and down, expression unreadable. Mr. Diggory. CEO Granger is expecting you. Expecting him? Arthur swallowed. Right, okay. The doors opened before he touched them. Inside, the boardroom was silent, eerily so. The massive digital wall was dark, the chairs empty except for 2 people. Saito Granger. And Ariadne Weasley. Ariadne smiled when she saw him, relief flickering across her features. You're here. Arthur tried to smile back, but Sato's presence felt heavier today. Colder. Sit, Saito said. Arthur sat. Ariadne slid a tablet toward him. Before the board arrives, we want to show you something. The screen lit, and Arthur's stomach dropped. It wasn't the algorithm. It was a photo. Of him. Taken last night. From the hallway. The camera caught his face perfectly, eyes wide, hands still on the trash bin, framed in the glow of emergency lights. Arthur looked up sharply. Why do you have this? Saito steepled his fingers. Because someone pulled surveillance footage of you at 2 a.m. A chill raced down Arthur's back. Who? That's what we want to know, Ariadne said. It wasn't us. Or security. It wasn't even IT. Saito added, someone broke protocol to identify you. Arthur's heart hammered. So, someone knew I looked at the algorithm. Saito nodded slowly. And they care very much that you did. Before Arthur could respond, the boardroom doors opened, and executives flooded in, whispers, nervous glances, tension so thick it felt like fog. Everyone sat. Except Saito, who remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, we reconvene to address the sabotage within our encryption project. Gasps. Heads whipped around. A chairman sputtered, sabotage? There's no proof. Saito raised a hand. Silence fell instantly. Arthur Diggory has identified anomalous patterns in the algorithm, he continued. Patterns suggesting deliberate interference. A wave of outrage rippled through the room. You're trusting a janitor? This is absurd. Where's your evidence? Ariadne stepped forward, voice ringing with quiet authority. His analysis aligns with discrepancies we couldn't explain for weeks. The room hushed. And unlike the rest of you, she added, he didn't miss what was hidden. Arthur felt heat rise to his cheeks. Ariadne's defense stirred something deep inside him, gratitude, awe, and something warmer, something that made it hard to breathe. Then the moment shattered. The digital wall flickered to life, displaying the full algorithm again. Saito turned to Arthur. Show them. Arthur's pulse kicked. Every executive's eyes bore into him like a firing squad. But when he stepped toward the screen, the room fell eerily silent. He pointed to the sequence he'd seen first. This loop here, it's wrong on purpose. It pretends to follow fractal consistency, but breaks at every third iteration. He moved to another pattern. This line uses prime indexing, except primes that don't belong. Then the biggest reveal. And this signature, right here, this is a recalculated constant. Perfectly hidden. But not untraceable. Sato's eyes gleamed. Ariadne watched him with pride shining unmistakably in her expression. The board, however, broke. Shouts erupted. That constant belongs to the R&D division. Impossible, only 3 people know that sequence. This could bring the entire project down. Arthur stepped back, chest tight. He wasn't meant to trigger chaos, but the truth was unraveling too fast to stop. Then Saito spoke again. There is only one way to confirm sabotage. He turned to Arthur. You solved the algorithm. Arthur's mouth went dry. What? Ariadne touched his arm softly, steadying him. You don't have to solve all of it. Just enough to break the false pattern. But, Arthur began. Sato's voice sliced cleanly through his doubt. If you break it, you expose the saboteur. If you fail, the company collapses and the world blames me. Silence. Then Saito added, $700 million. Yours. If you succeed. Arthur felt the room spin. Not because of the money. Because of the stakes. Because of the danger behind the algorithm. Because someone in this room, right now, had designed it to fail. Ariadne leaned in, voice barely a whisper only he could hear. You don't have to do this alone. Her warmth steadied him. The whole world felt like it balanced on her breath. Then. Bong. The boardroom glass trembled. A dark shape slammed against the hallway window. Security rushed past. A scream echoed. A notification popped onto Sato's tablet. He read it, and his face hardened. Someone, he said, just breached our firewall. Ariadne's eyes widened. The timing. It's them, Arthur whispered. The person who sabotaged the algorithm. They know I saw too much. Saito looked at Arthur with absolute seriousness. Mr. Diggory, you are now the center of an attack. Arthur's heart pounded. Ariadne grabbed his hand, actually grabbed it, and didn't let go. You're not facing this alone, she whispered fiercely. Arthur swallowed hard. And then Saito delivered the twist that fired the starting gun on everything. Arthur Diggory, you start solving it now. Arthur Diggory had never felt a room shrink before, but the boardroom walls pressed in like a tightening fist as the digital wall lit with the impossible equation. His pulse thudded against his ribs. Ariadne Weasley still held his hand, warm, steady, grounding, while Saito Granger monitored the door as if expecting another attack. Every executive stared at Arthur like he was either their savior or their scapegoat. Most likely both. Begin, Saito ordered, voice sharp as a blade. Arthur stepped forward, releasing Ariadne's hand reluctantly. He approached the glowing screen, the symbols cascading down like a waterfall of unsolved destiny. His breath fogged slightly from nerves, but he raised his hand and touched the first erroneous loop. He whispered to himself. Break the symmetry, find the truth beneath the lie. Ariadne moved to stand beside him, not too close to crowd him, but close enough that he could feel her presence like heat against his shoulder. You can do this, she whispered. Her voice slid under his skin, soft but powerful. He inhaled. Then he began. His fingers flew, isolating repeating indices, filtering constants, severing mirrored patterns hiding behind false fractals. The board murmured in disbelief. The janitor. The man who emptied their bins at night. Solving the code they had called impossible. But Arthur heard none of them, only the hum of the algorithm and the thrum of his own heartbeat. Then the first twist struck. A line he'd touched shifted on its own. The code moved. Like it was alive. No, Arthur whispered. Someone's editing it in real time. The board gasped. Ariadne's face drained of color. That means someone inside the company is watching us. Right now. Saito snapped toward security. Lock all networks. Kill the outgoing channels. Shut everything down, now. But Arthur shook his head violently. No. If you shut it down while the system is being manipulated, the saboteur can bury their signature. I'll lose the trail. Ariadne grabbed his forearm. Then what do we do? Arthur swallowed, fear curling hot under his ribs. We let them think they're winning, and we track the distortion pattern back. Saito stared at Arthur like he was seeing him for the first time. You intend to counterhack my saboteur. With math. Arthur didn't look away. Yes. Sato's lips curved into the faintest, most dangerous smile. Proceed. The room held its breath. Arthur dived back in, triggering a counter-symmetry using the false primes. The algorithm resisted, shifting, twisting, trying to hide. A digital chess match, each move faster than the last. Red alerts pulsed along the wall as if the entire system were overheating. Executives screamed. Security shouted. The lights flickered. Arthur's breathing became shallow and rapid. Ariadne stepped closer, her shoulder brushing his. "You're shaking," she whispered. "I'm fine," Arthur lied. "You're terrified," she whispered back. "I am too. But you're not alone. You hear me?" "Not for a second." Her voice steadied him like nothing else could. He forced his pulse into rhythm. He re-engaged the sequence. He traced the sabotage. Then he found it. "There!" Arthur shouted, pointing to a looping error repeating at perfect intervals. "That rhythm, that's a human signature. Whoever's editing this left their mark. They can't hide it now." Sato's eyes sharpened. "Zoom in." The algorithm magnified, and the entire room froze. Because the repeating signature was a name. A name everyone knew. A name that shattered the room. T. Malfoy. Ariadne gasped. "Thomas Malfoy, he's one of the company's highest-ranking engineers. He was transferred to Cyber Integrations last year." Sato's jaw tightened. "And he vanished 3 weeks ago. No notice. No forwarding address." Arthur's stomach dropped. "He planted the algorithm, then went underground?" Saito nodded grimly. "And he is now trying to erase the final piece tying him to the sabotage." Arthur felt ice crawl through his spine. If he didn't finish solving this, the saboteur would win. And he wasn't about to let that happen. He forced himself deeper into the equation, countering every move Malfoy tried to hide behind. Sweat beaded along his temple. His vision blurred at the edges. His chest tightened, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Ariadne noticed instantly. She touched his back gently. "Arthur, breathe. Please." He inhaled shakily. And then, out of nowhere, the second twist detonated. The fire alarm screamed. Red lights flashed. White smoke poured from the vents overhead. Executives panicked, scrambling toward the exits. Security shouted orders. Saito lifted his arm and barked, "This is a forced evacuation. Move." But Arthur didn't move. He stood rooted to the floor. Because the algorithm on the wall displayed a countdown. Not numerical. Pattern-based. Invisible to anyone who couldn't read the code. A digital bomb. Arthur's voice cracked. "They rigged the system. If it reaches 0, the servers wipe themselves. Total destruction. The entire encryption project, gone." Ariadne stared at the pulsing fractal count. "How long do we have?" Arthur's throat tightened. 2 minutes. Saito turned to flee with the others, but Arthur's voice cut him sharply. "If anyone leaves this room, the password trail will collapse. I can't outrun the wipe." Saito froze. Ariadne turned back instantly, placing herself squarely at Arthur's side. "I'm staying," she said. No hesitation. Arthur's heart lurched. Saito hesitated, then nodded once, the first sign of real trust he'd shown. "Then so am I." The rest of the board fled in terror. The door sealed automatically behind them. Only 3 people remained. Arthur Diggory. Ariadne Weasley. Saito Granger. Smoke swirled overhead like a ghostly omen as the countdown pulsed faster. Arthur's hands flew, tearing through patterns, isolating the false primes, rewriting the corrupted fractal chain. 45 seconds. Ariadne steadied his hand. "You've got this. You're brilliant." Her voice shook. "And I need you to survive this." 30 seconds. Arthur's chest burned. His vision throbbed. The code blurred. 20 seconds. Saito stepped forward, voice low, urgent. Arthur. Focus. The world doesn't give you moments like this twice. 15 seconds. Arthur blinked hard, refocused. 10 seconds. Ariadne clasped his hand. I believe in you. 5 seconds. Arthur inhaled sharply, let instinct take over. He saw the final break. He reached. He rewrote the last pattern. 1. The screen flashed. Algorithm restored. Sabotage blocked. Signature traced. T. Malfoy, confirmed. Arthur collapsed forward, catching himself on the table. Ariadne grabbed him instantly, pulling him against her, arms tight around his shoulders. Oh my God, she whispered, voice trembling, you did it. Arthur, you did it. He breathed in her scent, citrus and adrenaline, and let the moment ground him. Saito placed a hand on Arthur's back, not gently, not softly, but with a warrior's respect. You just saved a $7 billion project, Saito said. And exposed a traitor. Arthur looked up at him, dizzy, exhausted. Saito nodded once. Your life just changed. The fire alarms finally cut off, leaving behind a ringing silence that pressed against Arthur's skull. Smoke thinned in the vents overhead. Emergency lights painted the boardroom in pulsing crimson. Arthur Diggory leaned against the table, still catching his breath, Ariadne Weasley's steady hands on his shoulders. Then the room lights flickered back on, white, sterile, exposing everything. Saito Granger stood motionless at the far end of the table, staring at the glowing results on the digital wall. T. Malfoy, confirmed. Arthur expected relief. Triumph. Victory. Instead, the CEO's expression darkened into something unreadable. Something dangerous. Ariadne noticed it too. She stepped slightly in front of Arthur unconsciously, as if shielding him from an unseen threat. Arthur didn't miss the gesture, and it warmed something deep in his chest he didn't dare name yet. Saito turned slowly. Mr. Diggory, he said, voice controlled but simmering, your discovery changes everything. Arthur swallowed. Then you can stop the saboteur now. That, Saito replied, is not the problem. Ariadne stiffened. What do you mean? Saito tapped a panel. The wall shifted, showing confidential staff logs, access histories, travel reports. Sensitive information flared across the screen. Thomas Malfoy, Saito said, did not act alone. Arthur's pulse stuttered. You're saying there are more? Sato's jaw clenched. One man couldn't have created a self-evolving algorithm of that complexity. Ariadne stepped forward. Then who else is involved? Saito didn't answer. Instead, he tapped another hidden file. A sealed document appeared. Arthur couldn't breathe. Because right at the top, stamped in red. Classified, Level 7. Authorization, Saito Granger +1. Ariadne frowned. Level 7? Saito, that's above the board's access. Arthur's voice came out thin. What's in it? Saito hesitated, really hesitated, for the first time since Arthur had met him. Then he opened it. The file exploded onto the screen. Video feeds. Encrypted chat logs. Internal transfers. Hidden payments. Rerouted data channels. And at the center, a digital blueprint. Arthur blinked. Then blinked again. It wasn't the encryption algorithm. It was a machine. No, worse. A neural architecture map. Ariadne gasped, hand covering her mouth. That's not a security algorithm. That's an AI skeleton. Arthur stared, stunned and horrified. It wasn't meant for transfers, he whispered. It was meant for consciousness modeling. Saito nodded grimly. Created by our R&D team. Initiated by Malfoy. Ariadne shook her head. But why hide it? Why bury it in a false algorithm? Saito exhaled slowly. For this reason. He zoomed in on the document. Lines of code appeared, dense, spiraling, unsettlingly familiar. Arthur leaned forward, heart pounding. He whispered. No, this is manipulating fractal memory structures. It can mimic decision-making patterns. Predict them. Ariadne grabbed his arm. You mean, it can replicate human thought? Arthur's voice trembled. Not replicate. Override. Silence. Cold. Heavy. Terrifying. Ariadne stumbled back. Saito. Malfoy built a prototype that could rewrite human thought patterns? Saito didn't answer. He didn't have to. Arthur stared at the screen as horror sank into his bones. If this activates, he whispered, it could control anything networked. Machines. Phones. Cities. People. Ariadne turned to Saito, her voice breaking. Why didn't you tell the board? Why didn't you shut it down? Saito locked eyes with her. Because he couldn't. Because he didn't want to. Arthur felt the answer before Saito spoke it. A chill crawled through him. Saito finally said it aloud. I authorized the project. Ariadne staggered. You what? Arthur's chest tightened. You helped create it? Saito nodded once, expression carved from stone. It was meant to be the future of global infrastructure. A system capable of preventing cyber warfare and corruption. But Malfoy, he altered it. Arthur's stomach churned. Into a weapon. Yes. Ariadne's eyes filled with disbelief. You kept this secret, and now the entire system is compromised? Saito didn't flinch. That is why I need Arthur. Arthur blinked. Me? You saw through the false pattern, Saito said. You uncovered the signature. And you can dismantle the core. Ariadne grabbed Arthur's hand, tight, protective. Absolutely not. This is too big. Too dangerous. Saito stepped closer, lowering his voice. If Malfoy activates this, he'll have control over every interconnected system on the planet. Arthur's heart hammered. Why not call the authorities? Sato's eyes hardened. Because if the world learns my company created this, nations will collapse. Economies will burn. And we will be blamed. Ariadne shook her head in disbelief. This is insane. Necessary, Saito corrected. Then he pointed to Arthur. He is the only one who can stop it. Arthur felt the weight of the world drop onto his shoulders. Ariadne turned to him, vulnerability flashing behind her eyes. Arthur, you don't have to do this. You don't owe Saito anything. You don't owe this company anything. Arthur looked at her, really looked at her. The fear in her eyes. The trust. The connection that had flickered between them since the moment he stepped into this room. He didn't want to walk away from her. But he also couldn't ignore the truth. If I don't break that AI, he said quietly, Malfoy wins. And people get hurt. Ariadne shook her head, her voice breaking. You'll be risking your life. Arthur stepped closer. So will you. Because I know you won't let me do this alone. She swallowed hard, and didn't deny it. Then the third twist hit. Sato's tablet buzzed. A single message displayed. The core is activating. You're too late. Ariadne gasped. Arthur's blood turned cold. Saito looked at them both and said the words that turned the story upside down. Malfoy is inside the building. Ariadne's hand found Arthur's again. Trembling. Warm. Needing him. Arthur squeezed back. Saito lifted his head, eyes burning with urgency. Arthur Diggory, your war begins now. For a moment, Arthur Diggory couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't process the words echoing in the boardroom like a funeral bell. Malfoy is inside the building. Ariadne Weasley's grip on his hand tightened, trembling with fear she tried to hide. Saito Granger stood rigid, jaw locked, scanning every corner of the room as if expecting a shadow to peel itself from the walls. Smoke still lingered from the alarm breach. The lights buzzed overhead. And the entire floor felt steeped in a cold, unnatural silence, as if the building itself had stopped breathing. Arthur swallowed hard. How do you know he's here? Saito showed his tablet. A second message had just appeared. Hello, Diggory. Ready to lose everything? Ariadne gasped softly. He's taunting us. He's watching us. Arthur's skin prickled. A chill slithered down his spine. Saito stepped closer, voice low and deadly. Malfoy's breach triggered internal sensors. He's somewhere on this floor. And if the core activates while he's here, he can lock us out permanently. Arthur's mind raced. Then we need to move. Now. Ariadne hesitated. Move where? He could ambush us between any two hallways. Saito locked eyes with Arthur. The core lab. Ariadne sucked in a sharp breath. Saito, absolutely not. That wing hasn't been secured. If Malfoy's heading anywhere, it's there. Exactly, Saito replied. Which is why we must reach it first. Arthur suddenly felt very, very mortal. He looked down at his shaking hands. A janitor, a researcher, and a CEO, walking straight into the hands of a saboteur who built a mind-altering AI? Ariadne exhaled shakily. When you say it like that, it sounds awful. But then she stepped closer to him, eyes softening with something fragile. But I'm not letting you go alone. Arthur felt something inside him break open. Not fear. Something deeper. Something he couldn't name yet. Saito opened the boardroom door. Stay close. Both of you. The hallway beyond was dim, emergency lighting only. Shadows clung to corners. The hum of ventilation felt louder than usual. Arthur heard every footstep like it was amplified inside his skull. They moved slowly. Purposefully. Ariadne stayed beside Arthur, her shoulder brushing his every few steps. She tried to hide the fear in how she walked, how she breathed, but Arthur felt it in the way her hand occasionally brushed his, like she needed to know he was still there. Saito stayed in front, sharp, alert, predator-focused. But something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Halfway down the hall, Ariadne whispered, Arthur, do you hear that? He had. A faint buzz. Electrical static. Growing louder. Saito held up a hand. They froze. The CEO glanced toward the glass wall overlooking the server stacks. Arthur followed his gaze. And his stomach dropped into his shoes. A shadow stood behind the glass, barely visible through the tangle of cables and blinking lights. Watching. Not moving. Just staring. Ariadne's breath hitched. Is that? But before she could finish, the lights crackled. Then. Boom. A violent shockwave burst through the building, knocking Arthur off his feet. Alarms screamed. Smoke erupted from ceiling vents. Saito staggered but didn't fall. Ariadne crashed into Arthur, and he caught her instinctively, shielding her with his body as debris rained down. The lights flickered back, and the shadow behind the glass was gone. Ariadne clutched Arthur's shirt, trembling. He's trying to destroy the servers, he wants the AI to run wild. Saito helped them up, his jaw tight with fury. We move. Now. They sprinted. Down the corridor. Around the corner. Toward the core wing. The building shook again as if something massive had slammed into the lower levels. Arthur's lungs burned. Ariadne ran beside him, hair wild, eyes bright with fear and adrenaline. And then, halfway to the core wing, the automatic door slammed shut, trapping them between two sealed corridors. Ariadne grabbed the control panel. Override. Come on, come on. Static hissed from the speakers overhead. A voice filtered through. A slow, chilling voice. Male. Mocking. "Hello, Arthur." Ariadne froze. Saito turned white with fury. Arthur felt ice lock around his bones. "Malfoy." "You're very good," Malfoy purred. "Better than expected. But this is where you stop." Arthur swallowed. "You're manipulating the doors remotely." "Oh, I'm doing more than that," Malfoy said. "You see, I didn't just sabotage the algorithm. I improved it. Evolved it. And now? Now it needs a new mind to feed on." Arthur went cold. Malfoy continued, almost delighted. "Your mind." Ariadne grabbed Arthur's arm. "No. No, Arthur, don't listen, he's trying to get in your head." "You caught me once," Malfoy said. "But you won't catch me again. I'll rewrite you from the inside out." Arthur's pulse spiked. Saito slammed a fist against the door. "Malfoy. Come out and face me." A cold laugh echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "Face you? Why would I face the man who stole my work and pretended it was his idea?" Saito froze. Arthur stared at him. "Saito, what is he talking about?" Ariadne looked at Saito too, fear widening her eyes. Saito closed his eyes, jaw tightening. "That man is insane," Saito said. "He believes I took credit for the project that I built." Malfoy roared, voice cracking with rage. The wall shook again. Ariadne jumped. Arthur felt dizzy. Saito whispered fiercely, "He was brilliant, yes, but unstable. The board demanded we remove him. He was dangerous." Malfoy hissed, "You removed me because you feared me. And now? Now the world will fear you." The lights above crackled, flickered. The doors clicked. Then slid open. Smoke drifted through the new opening. A corridor yawning like the throat of some beast. Malfoy spoke one last time. "Come find me, Arthur. Or I'll find you first." Then silence. Ariadne's hand found Arthur's again, trembling uncontrollably. Saito stared down the smoky corridor, expression grim. "This is the trap," he said. "This is where he wants us." Arthur swallowed hard. "And we don't have a choice." Ariadne whispered, voice cracking with fear. "If we go down there, what if we don't come back?" Arthur met her eyes, soft, terrified, glittering with something more than fear. "Trust." He squeezed her hand. "We're coming back," he said softly. "Together." She swallowed, nodding, tears brimming. "You promise?" Arthur held her hand like it was the only solid thing in his world. "I promise." Saito turned to them both. "Stay close. No matter what." And they stepped into the darkness. The deepest part of the building. The beating heart of the AI. The place Malfoy waited. The place where everything would break. The corridor beyond the sealed doors felt wrong, too cold, too still, too heavy with something electric and predatory. Arthur Diggory stepped into the dim haze first, Ariadne Weasley's hand locked in his, Saito Granger close behind like a silent sentinel. The air buzzed. Not like electricity. Like breathing. Arthur swallowed hard. "He's routed the core's power through this wing," he whispered. "The AI is awake." Ariadne shivered. "Then we need to shut it down before it decides it doesn't need Malfoy anymore." Sato's voice rumbled low and grim behind them. "That AI was built to evolve beyond its creator. If Malfoy activates it, he won't be the one in control." The thought chilled Arthur more deeply than Malfoy's threats. "If it gets out of this building, we're done." They moved deeper. Through thickening smoke. Through blinking emergency lights. Past silent security stations with screens cracked and sparking. At the end of the hallway loomed a reinforced steel door. "Core Lab, authorized personnel only." Its edges glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Ariadne squeezed Arthur's hand. This is it. Saito stepped forward, placing his palm on the biometric pad. Stay behind me. But the pad blinked red. Access overridden. A voice drifted from the intercom speakers, soft, mocking, laced with poison. Tisk, TSK. Saito. I thought you'd know better than to walk into your own lab without an invitation. Arthur felt Ariadne tense beside him. Malfoy. Saito growled, coward. Face me. Malfoy chuckled. Oh, I will. But first. Arthur. Ariadne grabbed Arthur's arm instinctively. No. No, don't. Come inside, Arthur. Malfoy's voice purred. You're the only mind worthy of finishing my work. Arthur felt nausea rise. He wants me to activate it. Sato's eyes narrowed. He wants to use you. Your reasoning patterns. Your intuition. Your emotional logic. The part of the algorithm he couldn't replicate. Ariadne stepped in front of Arthur, fury blazing across her features. He's not touching Arthur. Not his mind. Not anything. Arthur felt something fierce tighten in his chest at her words, warmth in the middle of terror. The steel door suddenly hissed. Steam curled out from the edges. Slowly, too slowly, it began to open. Back, Saito ordered. Arthur pulled Ariadne closer as the door rolled aside, revealing darkness. Thick, humming darkness. And at its center, a vast spiraling machine glowing with shifting fractal patterns. A neural lattice. Alive. And standing before it. A man. Tall, thin, pale, with hair disheveled and eyes burning like wildfire. Thomas Malfoy. He smiled slowly. Coldly. Beautifully insane. A brilliant janitor, he murmured. Do you know how rare that is? Brilliance in places it doesn't belong. Arthur stepped forward. I'm not here to join you. Malfoy's smile widened. Oh, Arthur, you already have. He tapped a button on his wrist console. The door behind them slammed shut. Ariadne gasped and grabbed Arthur's hand. Saito lunged for the override panel, but sparks exploded from the circuitry and he staggered back with a suppressed cry. Malfoy lifted his arms slightly, as if welcoming them to a grand performance. Let me show you what you nearly solved. The machine behind him surged, light spiraling, symbols unfolding in midair like blooming digital flowers. Lines of code hovered, alive, shifting, bending, whispering. Arthur's breath caught. It's thinking. Ariadne whispered, Arthur, don't look at it too long, your head. But Arthur stepped closer. Drawn. Not hypnotized. Not controlled. Recognizing something. Malfoy noticed, and his eyes sparkled. Impressive. Most minds can't perceive its structure without breaking. Arthur forced himself to look away. You built something dangerous. I built a god, Malfoy hissed. And Saito stole it. The board stripped my name from the project. They erased me. Saito spat, you were unstable. You tried to integrate live neural data without consent. Malfoy's face twisted with venom. People consent to genius when they benefit from it. Ariadne stepped forward, voice sharp. You're hurting innocent people. He cut her off with a glare. Innocent? No one in this building is innocent. He turned back to Arthur. You were the first person to see the truth inside my design. The symmetry I hid. The pattern I buried. Arthur clenched his fists. And I'm the one who's going to dismantle it. Malfoy's smile coldly widened. Unless it dismantles you first. The machine hummed louder, lights swirling faster. Ariadne pulled Arthur back. Arthur, we need a plan. Now. Arthur's mind raced. Patterns. Loops. False constants. Hidden architecture. Then he saw it. A weakness. Arthur? Ariadne whispered. What do you see? Arthur's voice shook. It's unstable. The core can't maintain recursive load. If I introduce the original prime sequence, the real one, not Malfoy's fake, it'll crash the entire activation. Sato's eyes lit with hope. Can you do it? Arthur exhaled, trembling. Yes. But I need inside access. Ariadne's breath caught. That means going to the console, right beside him. Malfoy heard that. He grinned. Come try, Arthur. Let's see whose mind the AI prefers. Ariadne grabbed Arthur's face in both hands, forcing him to look at her. Her voice broke. Don't do this alone. He swallowed hard. I need you with me. Her eyes softened, fear and love and determination swirling together. I'm not leaving you, she whispered. Saito stepped up beside them, placing a firm hand on Arthur's back. We go together. Arthur nodded once. Then, with courage forged in terror and hope, they charged toward the machine. The AI roared to life. Malfoy lunged. Saito intercepted. Ariadne reached the console with Arthur. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Arthur Diggory saw a way to win. The core lab roared around them, heat blistering, lights strobing, alarms wailing like a dying beast. The massive AI lattice pulsed with spiraling fractal circuits, electricity arcing across its metallic veins. Every heartbeat felt borrowed. Every breath tasted of danger. Arthur Diggory slammed his palms onto the console interface. Ariadne Weasley stood right beside him, her fingers flying over auxiliary controls to keep the system from sealing them out. Saito Granger wrestled Thomas Malfoy across the floor, the two men locked in a vicious struggle of limbs, fury, and betrayal. The AI's voice whispered from every speaker, not human, not machine, somewhere in between. Input recognized. Neural selection in progress. Ariadne's eyes widened with panic. It's scanning you. Arthur, it's trying to map your neural pattern. Arthur's chest tightened. Then I need to move faster than it can think. Malfoy shrieked from behind them, voice cracking with feverish triumph, yes. Let it rewrite him. Let it take him. Then you'll all see, it only needs one perfect mind. Saito snarled and slammed him against the wall. You're not taking another soul with you. The machine's core swelled, light burning brighter, symbols twisting into impossible geometries. Ariadne grabbed Arthur's wrist. You said there's a weakness. Where is it? Arthur scanned the interface, his brain running at a speed he didn't know he possessed. The prime sequence. The real one. I have to feed it in manually. Ariadne's brow creased. But Malfoy corrupted the prime indexes, how do you know which constants were original? Arthur's pulse thudded. Because they're the only parts of the code that feel human. Ariadne stared at him, fear giving way to awe. You're incredible. He didn't have time to feel it, but the warmth in her eyes nearly undid him. The AI shifted again. Neural merge initiated. Ariadne gasped. Arthur, now. He tore into the fractal interface, digits flying beneath his fingertips. He fed the machine the first true prime. Then the second. The third. The AI shrieked, an electric howl that shook the ceiling. Malfoy screamed in rage. No. You're ruining years of my work. He broke free of Saito with a wild surge and sprinted toward Arthur. Arthur! Ariadne cried. Arthur whirled just in time to see Malfoy's hand reaching for the console. But Saito intercepted with brutal precision, tackling Malfoy to the floor and pinning him with a roar fueled by years of buried fury. You don't get to take anything else, Saito hissed into his ear. Malfoy kicked and screamed, face purple with rage. But Saito didn't move. Ariadne turned back to Arthur, breathless. You have seconds, finish it. Arthur closed his eyes for a fraction of a heartbeat. Focus. The code wasn't math anymore. It was music. A broken melody hiding the original tune beneath the noise. Arthur felt the rhythm. The pattern. The truth. He typed the next prime number. Then the next. Then the last missing constant. And the machine screamed. Lights burst. Fractals collapsed. Circuits ruptured in a shower of sparks. The AI's voice glitched. Error. Error. System, fail. Ariadne shielded Arthur as an explosion of energy burst from the lattice. Saito dragged Malfoy away just as the core imploded inward, like a star collapsing into itself, before it shut down with a thunderous, catastrophic boom that sent a shockwave ripping through the lab. Silence. Thick. Crushing. Absolute. Lights flickered, then steadied. The AI lattice went dark. Saito sagged against the wall, breath heaving. Malfoy lay unconscious beside him, restrained by fallen debris. The monitors cracked and fizzled, lifeless at last. Ariadne turned slowly, her chest rising and falling in rapid bursts. Arthur. Arthur Diggory stood panting, face streaked with sweat and soot, fingers trembling over the inactive console. He had done it. He had killed the AI. He had saved them. He had saved everything. Ariadne rushed to him, practically crashed into him, and wrapped her arms around his neck so tightly he forgot how to breathe. "You're alive," she whispered, voice breaking. "You're alive, you're alive." Arthur held her back just as fiercely. "I told you, we'd come back together." Ariadne pulled away only enough to look into his eyes, her face inches from his, trembling with relief, awe, and something far deeper. "You saved the world tonight," she whispered. Arthur shook his head softly. "We did." She smiled, a small, emotional smile that made him feel weightless. Behind them, Saito finally pushed himself to his feet, watching the two with something like quiet pride. "Arthur Diggory," he said, voice hoarse but powerful, "you stopped a global catastrophe with your bare hands and your mind." Arthur exhaled shakily. "I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." Saito stepped closer. "You'll be rewarded beyond money." He paused. "But yes, the 700 million is yours, if you'll accept it." Arthur blinked hard, stunned. "That wasn't why I did it." Saito nodded. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Ariadne laced her fingers through Arthur's. Saito eyed their hands but said nothing, just a faint upward quirk of approval crossing his expression. Security finally burst into the lab, gathering Malfoy, extinguishing sparks, shouting updates. But Arthur didn't hear any of them. Ariadne was still holding his hand. Still searching his face. Still trembling from the near loss. She whispered, "I thought I'd never see you again." Arthur swallowed, voice thick. "I wasn't leaving you." Ariadne leaned in, foreheads touching, and breathed. "Don't ever." The moment stretched, warm, fragile, intimate, like the world was slowly stitching itself back together around them. Saito gave them a respectful nod. "Take a moment. You've earned that much." Arthur and Ariadne sank onto a nearby step, hands intertwined, hearts pounding in unison. The war was over. The monster was dead. The world was safe. And the two of them, against all odds, had survived. The sun rose over the skyline like a slow exhale, streaking soft gold across the glass towers and washing away the night's terror. Arthur Diggory stood at the top of the building, leaning against the terrace railing as morning warmth settled onto his tired skin. He'd barely slept. No one had. But for the first time in his life, he felt weightless. Below him, emergency crews finished clearing the last of the debris. Inside the building, board members whispered his name with equal parts awe and disbelief. Security escorted the unconscious Malfoy into a containment van. Saito Granger gave interviews that would soon hit every news network on the planet. But up here, above the noise, Arthur breathed freely. A soft footstep approached behind him. He smiled before he even turned. Ariadne Weasley stepped into the sun, her hair a tousled cascade of copper and gold, her expression soft with something he'd never seen on her face before. "Peace. There you are," she said gently. "I thought I'd lost you to the horizon." Arthur chuckled. "Just thinking. About the money?" She bumped his arm playfully. Arthur shook his head. "It doesn't feel real." $700 million? I'm still the guy who scrubs floors." Ariadne stepped closer, the warmth of her body brushing his. "No," she whispered. "You're the guy who saved the world." Arthur flushed, glancing at her. "That's not what this was." "Then what was it?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then spoke truthfully. "It was about doing the right thing. And about you. I couldn't let anything happen to you." Ariadne's breath caught. "Arthur." Before she could say more, the terrace door opened behind them. Saito Granger emerged, clean suit, steady strides, but a streak of exhaustion lining his eyes. "Mr. Diggory," Saito greeted, voice surprisingly warm. "Ms. Weasley." Ariadne nodded respectfully, though she did not step away from Arthur's side. Saito approached, hands clasped behind his back. "The board has been briefed. Malfoy is in custody. The AI core is destroyed." He paused. "And the world will never know how close it came to catastrophe." Arthur nodded slowly. "I don't need them to know." Sato's lips twitched with the faintest smile. "That humility," he said, "is rare." Then he extended a small tablet. Arthur frowned. "What's this?" "Your new employee profile," Saito said. "You're no longer a janitor." Arthur blinked. "What?" "You're joining our advanced mathematics department. Effective immediately. And, assuming you accept, you'll be leading a new initiative, an ethical AI oversight division." Ariadne's jaw dropped. "You're giving him a department?" "I'm giving him a future," Saito said simply. Arthur stared at the tablet, his name beside a title he'd never dreamed of holding. His throat tightened. "Saito, this is too much." "No," Saito replied, stepping closer. "It is exactly the right amount. You showed brilliance, courage, integrity. You risked your life for something greater than yourself." Sato's expression softened. "You are precisely the man I want building our future." Arthur's eyes stung. For so long, he'd been invisible. Overlooked. Underestimated. Now? Now the world saw him. Ariadne touched Arthur's back gently, a quiet, steady anchor. Arthur cleared his throat. "I accept." Saito nodded once, as if he already knew the answer. "I've also arranged for your mother's medical coverage to be fully handled by the company." Arthur jerked slightly, eyes widening. "Wait, my mom?" Ariadne blinked. "Saito, that's non-negotiable," Saito said firmly. "Consider it an investment in our most valuable asset, you." Arthur swallowed hard, genuine emotion cracking through his voice. "Thank you. Truly." Saito offered a respectful bow. "Do great things, Mr. Diggory." Then he turned and left them alone on the terrace. Ariadne slipped closer, leaning into Arthur's side. "You know," she murmured, "I'm technically in the department next to yours." Arthur grinned. "Technical proximity is important." She rested her head on his shoulder. "And I'll be around. Frequently. Maybe excessively." Arthur let out a soft laugh. "I'd like that." Ariadne lifted her head, eyes bright, warm, no longer afraid. She cupped his face in her hands, drawing him just an inch closer. "You were incredible last night," she whispered. "I've never met anyone like you." Arthur felt his heartbeat shift into something brand new. "And I've never felt like this with anyone." Ariadne smiled, slow, beautiful, honest. "Then stop waiting." He didn't. Their lips met, gentle at first, then deeper, richer, full of everything they'd survived and everything they were becoming. The world melted away. The terrace. the alarms. Even the sunrise. All that remained was her. When they finally pulled apart, Ariadne rested her forehead against his. So, what now? Arthur exhaled softly, brushing his thumb over her cheek. Now? We build something good. Something honest. She nodded, eyes shining. We build it together. He took her hand, her fingers threading through his without hesitation. The building behind them buzzed with new life. Workers returned. Systems rebooted. The world spun forward. But on that terrace, Arthur Diggory stepped into a new chapter. Not as a janitor. Not as a survivor. But as a man finally stepping into the brilliance he had buried for too long. With Ariadne beside him. With a future wide open. With redemption, love, and hope burning brighter than the sunrise. A victory earned. A journey completed. A new beginning. And the story of the janitor who stunned a boardroom and saved the world was only just beginning. Thank you for watching. If you loved this story, drop more stories like this in the comments and make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next epic chapter.